in the first tree.
So this build is very much like what Brian Braun doing, Brad Nelson, Austin Bursavich, that entire team, along with Ari Lax and company. This is basically what they played at the Pro Tour last weekend. Brad Nelson going 9-1 with that deck to achieve Platinum. Austin Bursavich 8-2 to qualify for the next handful of Pro Tours.
Warden also plays very nicely with Sorok because it's very easy to get Warden to 3 power, and then you're triggering things, and that's sweet.
This whole deck plays nicely with Sorok. What doesn't play nicely with Sorok is Brian Braun doing's nicknames for the card. He calls it Nasty Soraksty, which makes no sense.
That is really straining.
Surraktsy. What does that even mean?
You're going to throw out your pigeon arm straining like that.
Yep. Just doesn't make any sense.
No.
I think Brian, we're kind of in this feud right now where in his articles he just gives things nicknames just to terrorize me. Mm-hmm. He calls Whispered Elemental WD-40.
Okay.
Which also doesn't make any sense.
Because it's Whisper Wood, I guess. W and then D at the end.
What's the 40?
I don't know. The combined power and toughness of a manifest creature multiplied by 10. I don't know. I'm doing what I can.
He's terrorizing me in his articles by just giving cards random nicknames.
Yep.
It's really starting to become too much. You know, the Drain and Brain with Obzadat, that was one thing. Kind of charming. Obzadaddy.
I think that you should just post the next article all in strike through for all of his nicknames.
I did attack his article this week a little bit. There was one strike through of Nasty Sirax. I can't even say, it's not even a word.
Yeah.
Here's a Thoughtseize.
Or just a bunch of, black box redacted over certain things.
Censored.
Yeah.
And Hostilities, Obzon Charm, Siege Rhino, along with Sansep Citadel, Temple of Silence, and Temple of Malady here for Charles. So actually a pretty good mulligan to 6.
Yep, and this is a solid matchup typically for Obzon Control, just a little bit bigger, a little bit slower, more easily able to sideboard into things like End Hostilities, which are potent in the matchup.
I do like that players are beginning to find, I think, the appropriate home for these new cards. Surak was obviously a powerful card. And we saw Ross Merriam try in his green-red aggro deck at the Season 1 Invitational, and he did make top 8 of that tournament, though not a great standard record. 5-4 after all the matches were played. This seems like this Obzon aggro deck a really good home for Surak.
Well, the problem with, not that there's a problem with Surak, but just the conversation is, there's only so many 4s you get to play. There's a lot of really powerful 4 and 5 mana cards in Dragon, Kiernan, and Standard in general, so some stuff just ends up getting cut, not because it's bad, but just because there's only so much of it you can play.
Yeah. A Temple of Silence. Top card goes to the bottom for Charles. We head back Chad's way. He's got himself a Rakshasa Death Dealer, as you can see. So already off to a really nice start, though a painful one. He's down to 15 already. I suppose that's all part of it when you're playing Obzon aggro.
Yep. I mean, Boswell was all Mana Confluence and Thoughtseize last game we watched, so that's just what you sign up for.
Yep. Death Dealer going to come across here for 2 points of damage. You saw Windsweep Teeth is the land, and Chad is going to pass it over. One of the interesting things when playing Obzon aggro, too, is when you're supposed to get aggressive with that Death Dealer.
Well, I think in this kind of matchup, it is pretty annoying for Obzon Control to play against it with regeneration mana up because just not a lot of things kill it. So I think in the interest of blunting the removal spells, which is likely what Charles is up to in a spot where he's just passing with a bunch of mana up, you just want to get in your shots when you can. There are going to be opportunities when Obzon taps out for some play where you can start threatening to deal a lot of damage, and I think in those spots you do take your shots to pump, but early on in the game, I think the Death Dealer is good enough where it's worth conceding some early damage just to make sure you're getting some shots across.
Chad going to sacrifice his Windswept Teeth. He got a forest here. He's down to 14. Charles with a 3rd land for his turn. He's at 18 at this point. Both these players 9-2. Can afford one more loss and still make top 8. So winning this match certainly important as here comes the Death Dealer. 2 damage to be dealt. No pumps here. Here's land number 4 in Caves of Koilos. Perhaps it's time for a Siege Rhino.
Looks that way.
There it is.
I don't mind tapping out for a Siege Rhino here because if Charles wants to kill your Death Dealer instead of a Siege Rhino, sweet.
By all means.
Go right ahead.
That's exactly what he's going to do. Hero's Downfall will take care of the Death Dealer.
Well, he's got his own Siege Rhino to check the Siege Rhino. He also has End Hostilities in his hand, so there's a priority for getting it off the table because it can pump past Siege Rhino and can regenerate against End Hostilities.
Sansep Citadel and a Hero's Downfall. Gonna clear everything up here, Will Charles. So we go back to Chad. Fleece main line the draw.
Remember, Chad is aware of the end hostilities in Charles' hand.
Yep.
Makes everything pretty complicated.
There's another rhino. Chad up to 16, Charles down to 10. But as noted, Charles has a rhino of his own and hostilities in hand. Zhang will play his own siege rhino. Tie this game up, it looks like. 13 all. Sansep Citadel passing on the turn. Kiernan weighing his options this turn. And one of the cards that really puts things over the top in this particular matchup is Wingmate Rock. Those are in the sideboard for Chad.
And I would have to assume they came in here. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the matchup.
There's Fleece main line. Kiernan will pass the turn back. Had to take one to cast it, so he's down to 12. Zhang has the lead now.
Charles with 2 main deck copies of Wingmate Rock in his own deck.
Here comes Siege Rhino. Perhaps someone wants to cast M hostilities. There's the block. It could be Wingmate Rock, though, as you did mention.
Or this is also just a free attack, because if Charles does have a removal spell, you can always just kill the blocker before damage and assign trample damage as appropriate.
Yep,
so
very true.
You can just test the waters there and see, you know, what's going on in Chad's hand potentially.
Well, there's Wingmate Rock, so that answers that question. And this card is very, very powerful in the mirror. Now, this isn't a traditional mirror, but it's just good against all forms of Abzan decks. So there is the 3-4 along with it.
And I think that Chad may have had Valorous Stance in his hand, and he was trying to set up some spot where he can bleed out the end hostilities and protect his creature from it or do something with that Siege Rhino. But I don't know if this is the first time he's seen Wingmate Rock in the match, but that was very punishing that it played out that way. Because if he just goes Valorous Stance your Siege Rhino, attack you, say go, don't play the Fleece Main Lion, you might just get the end hostilities for your Siege Rhino and things are pretty good.
Yep.
But with Wingmate Rock being the play there for Charles, that was max punishment for the way that Chad tried to set things up.
Well, Chad is going to use Abzan Charm to get that off the table. Attack here for 7 points of damage.
Yeah, just trying to get this into a spot where Charles kind of feels like he has to use the end hostilities, and then Chad can fire back with whatever he has left over with Charles at a reasonably low life total.
Yep, that's the plan. Force his hand to cast that end hostilities, and hopefully Kiernan has things to dump after that.
Right.
Here comes Siege Rhino.
I mean, Charles is down to 2 cards in hand. He's got his end hostilities plus whatever his draw step was. So unless they do something very good, this is not a bad spot for Chad.
Yep. There's that hostilities. This is presumably how Kiernan drew it up. It's an empty board. Let's see who peels better. Kiernan will start. He's like he's going to take 1. Go down to 4. There's Fleece Main Line. Sansep Citadel. Pass the turn back. Land number 5, they're actually pretty important for the Fleece Main Line.
Yep.
Okay, Wingmate Rock. Hello.
Well, this is not bad for Chad necessarily.
True.
He can go monstrous without taking damage.
Well, there's the attack.
And this sets him up where if Charles has nothing, even the Wingmate Raw trigger doesn't allow Charles to survive because he goes to 2 from 2 to 3.
Yep. Take a draw. I believe that was Abzan Charm.
Yeah, that should be lethal.
That's going to do it exactly. That plus a pump is going to get the job done. Tommy top deck there from Charles Zhang. He will take a deep breath, and he should. Wins this match 2-1 here over Chad Kiernan. Obs on control will take care of Obs on aggro. Zhang moves on to 10-2 here in Providence.
Charles has a lot of draws in that spot. Obs on Charm, Siege Rhino, even just a blocker might be able to get the job done depending on what Chad drew. But very fortunate there for Charles to be able to get it done on that turn before Chad got one more draw step.
Congratulations, Charles Zhang. He moves on to 10-2 here in Providence. Chad Kiernan moves down to 9-3 with his Obs on aggro deck. Still in top 8 contention, however.
Absolutely. So not all doom and gloom for Chad. Threw a very good punch there we saw in game number 3 in a pretty challenging matchup. The way that Valorous stance played out there was pretty rough for him. Don't know if he saw Remate Rock previous in the match, but it was not ideal given what Charles ended up playing.